Few have had a storied career in the automotive industry as Giorgetto Giugiaro. The designer has worked on every kind of car you can think of, show-stopping concepts, fuel-sipping subcompacts, luxurious grand tours, sensible mid-size sedans, and everything in between. He has even helped pioneer new vehicle segments. Automakers of all sizes, from low-volume supercar manufacturers to massive multinational conglomerates, have sought his services. Giugiaro's influence extends far beyond the world of cars. His portfolio includes watches, cameras, footwear, bicycles, espresso machines, boats, and yes, even pasta. And he's still active today at the age of 86. This is the story of Giorgetto Giugiaro, the greatest car designer ever. Maria Sibilla and Mario Giugiaro welcomed Giorgetto, their second child, into the world on August 7, 1938. The family lived in the mountainous village of Garessio. Maria was a seamstress while Mario worked as a fresco painter. Artistry ran through his side of the family. Mario's father, Luigi, yes, his father's name was Luigi, also painted for a living. It was only natural for Giorgetto to follow in their footsteps. He sharpened his drawing and painting skills in the family workshop. Mario also played a crucial role in his development. In an interview with Lini Auto, Giorgetto revealed that his father made him draw a landscape or portrait every day. The boy, who preferred playing outside to sitting hunched over a desk, found a way around this. He prepared several drawings at once and presented one to his father each evening. The situation taught him the importance of working quickly. Mario also told his son that artistic ability alone wasn't enough to earn a decent living. In the real world, what truly mattered was technical knowledge. In 1952, he convinced Giorgetto to move to Turin to study design. He said he, quote, was drawing morning, noon, and night during this part of his life. Eugenio Como, a distinguished artist and caricaturist, was his instructor. At the end of 1 year, he organized a student showcase. Como invited his nephew to the event, who was none other than Dante Giacosa, Fiat's technical director. Giorgetto's work caught his eye. After a chat, Giacosa offered him an apprenticeship at his company. Giorgetto, still just 17 at this point, accepted. He officially joined Fiat's Special Car Stylistic Studies Office in 1955. Going from the workshop and academic settings to a massive company was initially a discouraging experience. He became acclimated to his new environment in time, and that initial anxiety turned into frustration. Despite his best efforts, the young designer couldn't make an impact in the automotive front. His proposals never got to the firm's decision makers. The tractor, train, and appliance projects that Fiat handed down did little to satisfy his ambitions. And with the way things were going, he believed that it would be a while before his work saw the light of day. Perhaps he could make an impact elsewhere. Giorgetto, looking to scrape together some extra money for a pair of skis, agreed to make some drawings for a friend. This person worked as a manager for Carrozzeria Bertone. Nuccio Bertone, the man in charge of the design house, laid eyes on the sketches and demanded to see the artist. A meeting was arranged between the two. Giorgetto could sense that Nuccio didn't believe the work came from someone who was hardly 21. To convince the man, he suggested that he put him to the test. Nuccio gave him the layout of an upcoming car and wanted him to style a body around it. Giorgetto finished the assignment after his technical drawing course. Nuccio saw the test drawings and, sometime later, gave him some surprising news. Alfa Romeo wanted to buy the car. This became a delicate situation for Giorgetto, seeing as how Fiat still employed him. Then Nuccio asked how much the company paid him. When Giorgetto responded 80,000 lire, Nuccio said that he'd pay him 120,000 lire to work for him instead. A 50% raise wasn't the only draw. While Nuccio had the final say in design matters, working at Bertone would give Giorgetto more creative freedom. He'd have some massive shoes to fill. Franco Scaglione, the man who had the job previously, was an accomplished designer in his own right. This was yet another change of pace for Giorgetto. His duties at Bertone somehow left him with even less free time than before, and there was the added pressure of being directly in the spotlight. No longer was he toiling away in the shadows. He was now the guiding hand of a major carrozzeria. He recalled that he, quote, didn't sleep for nights. At least he didn't have to wait long to see one of his creations hit the road. The design that Alfa Romeo purchased entered production as the 2000 Sprint. Giorgetto's first project would influence Alfa's for decades to come. All of the major elements are located in a grille that spans the entire width of the front end. The outer headlights are larger than the innermost ones. This opens the grille up a bit and creates some visual variety. Chrome strips from the headlight and hood draw the eye to the corporate Alfa Romeo grille. This area is set into the body, giving the already elevated grille even more room to stand out. Alfas in the past have pulled this element out, but not to this extent. Thick horizontal bands contrast with the dark areas. Under this sits a thin chrome bumper. A defined edge is created where the grille and hood meet. This gives the car some crispness and clearly separates those areas. Giugiaro brought the front fender out to a point. The shark nose starts low and gradually rises to meet the screen. The belt line has a slight curve to it. This shortens the body and gives it a bit of energy. The slender A-pillars are pulled back, extending the hood and allowing the windshield to curve. Light pours into the cabin, thanks in part to the thin B-pillars. A slight body roll creates a light line that guides the eye from the front of the car to the rear. The door handle is flush with the body to keep things streamlined. The flourish of the rear wheel arc cuts it off early and calls back to a similar feature on the Giulia Sprint Speciale. The back screen curves out of the profile a bit, stretching the greenhouse and reducing the mass of the C-pillar. Like the front end, the major elements back here are arranged instead of an indentation. Pulled rear fenders give the coupe a touch of formality. All in all, the 2000 Sprint is a successful first effort from Giugiaro. As previously mentioned, the Alfa Romeo 2000 Sprint was the first of his designs to be developed at Bertone. It was not the first to be seen by the public though. That honor went to the GORDON-KEEBLE GT, which debuted at the 1960 Geneva Motor Show in March. John Gordon, a director at Peerless Cars, had a curious assignment appear at his desk. The job came from racing engineer Jim Keeble, who wanted the company to swap a Corvette V8 into a French Peerless. The pair realized that there might be demand for a hybrid, or a car with American running gear and European design. After getting the commission finished, the two of them went into business together. Gordon asked Bertone to style the car. The GORDON-KEEBLE GT uses some of the elements from the 2000 Sprint in a more formal way. While the hood and front end are in separate planes, its headlights are broken apart from the grille. We can treat them as a single unit because how they're arranged in the enclosure. A large vent appears in the hood. This won't be the last time a feature like this will show up in Giugiaro's early work. Below this is the GORDON-KEEBLE emblem. A turtle seems like a strange choice for a sporty GT. Funny story there. The car didn't have a logo late into its development. The team was in the middle of a photo shoot when a turtle wandered onto the set. Someone picked it up and placed it on the car's nose. And what about the yellow surround? According to a Salodrome article, the turtle was so frightened by the situation that it wet itself. So there's that. The GT also features thin pillars, an airy greenhouse, and a more defined 3-box architecture. Although it received a warm reception in Switzerland, the operation quickly unraveled. GORDON-KEEBLE went under in 1965, after building 90 or so units. When Nuccio hired Giugiaro, he assured him that he would be exempt from carrying out his military service. This didn't happen. Italy's Alpine Corps called him into service. After training in the mountains for a few months, Giugiaro was transferred to the barracks in Bra. It sat between his hometown of Garasio and Bertone's headquarters in Turin. Sometime later, his employer rented a room for him to work on projects after fulfilling his military obligations for the day. Giugiaro designed his first Ferrari around this time, which was revealed at the 1960 Turin Motor Show in November. Enrico Wax, a Genoa businessman and personal friend of Enzo, had the car commissioned. That much is indicated by the name. The badge on the car reads Prototype EW. Stainless steel is used extensively on the car. The roof, rockers, and front and rear lower clips are made from the stuff. It breaks up the body mass and adds contrast while blending in reasonably well with the silver paint. The grille has a mesh insert instead of the egg crate that Ferraris of the day used. Even more unusual are the mesh covers over the headlights. This ties both elements together and plays into the car's overall theme. The entire car is silver, but the individual elements have a different execution. It has a fair amount of depth. The following year saw the debut of the Aston Martin DB4 Bertone Jet. Its grille and headlight arrangement echoes that of the Ferrari. Here, it's shaped like the corporate Aston Martin grille. The front bumper doesn't completely round out. Instead, the halves stop just around the air intake and jut out around the edges. A massive hood bulge replaces the Ferrari stepped intake. Bertone chopped the wheelbase of a factory DB4 GT by 5 inches to get their desired stance. Contrasting rockers and valences tighten the body up. Both this car and the Ferrari use some sort of side decoration. The ASTON is a bit more ornate. 2 lines trail off the side vent. The bottom one fades around the middle of the door, while the upper one shoots through the well and continues onto the rear fender. The shoulder line, relatively level thus far, gains strength as it passes the wheel. It continues on its path, slopes down, and finally rounds out around the character line. The rounded teardrop shape is equal parts elegant and sporting, which represents Aston Martin to a T. Another car at the event stole the Bertone's thunder, the Jaguar E-Type. Once showgoers laid eyes on a drop-dead gorgeous sports car that they could actually buy, the Jet became something of an afterthought. After a tumultuous post-war existence, BMW entered a new era in Frankfurt. 2 cars sat in the automaker's booth. Its hopes may have hinged upon the success of the new class, but enthusiasts were more interested in the coupe alongside it. The company learned that the body of the Lancia Flaminia Coupe could fit under the 3200S's chassis with only minor modifications. Because Pininfarina designed that car, marketing head Helmut Werner Bosch reasoned that it only made sense for the styling house to work on a flagship coupe for them as well. Management rejected this and gave the assignment to Bertone instead. Giorgetto's front signature has been adapted to fit the BMW design language. The horizontal grille is bisected by the corporate kidneys. The hood strake, which ties in with models such as the 3200S and 503, shares its execution with the 2000 Sprint. Contrasting lower trim lightens the car up a touch. It is only used on the body side. Instead of following the rear window down to the shoulder, the side glass kicks forward. This is commonly known as a Hofmeister kink. It's named after Wilhelm Hofmeister, BMW's design chief from 1955 to 1970. Companies had used this element in their cars years before the 3200 CS. Bertone's DB4 Jet featured similar window treatment. Even the new class used a toned-down interpretation of the feature. BMW embraced the CS's version, making it an integral part of the styling identity that can be seen in its vehicles today. Most of the cars following this one did without the badge, though. A high sticker price limited its appeal. Salladrum notes that it cost around 30,000 Deutsche Marks, or about the price of a small house at the time. Its assembly process likely played a part in this. Bertone built the bodies and then shipped them to BMW by rail for finishing. About 600 units left the factory when production ended in 1965. 2 more Giugiaro designs appeared in turn, a custom-bodied Maserati 5000 GT and a sports coupe bearing the coach builder's badging. The Bertone MILLE, as it was known, began life as the brainchild of Enzo Ferrari. He wanted an offering for those who couldn't afford one of his own cars. It was dubbed the 854 for its 854cc engine. Exterior styling, derived from the Fiat 1200, hadn't been nailed down in this early phase of development. The automaker couldn't build the car on its own and wanted to get another party involved. Because Ferrari wouldn't be producing it, it mandated that its branding could not appear anywhere on the car, hence the Bertone MILLE name. Entrepreneur Oronzio De Nora bought the rights to the car from Ferrari for about $300,000 and took over production. The ASC 1000 GT, a reworked version of the MILLE, debuted the following year. Both cars are identical aside from the headlights. The MILLE used slick plexiglass covered units, while the 1000 GT had exposed, upright lamps. About 4 months after the MILLE debuted, Simca unveiled the Coupe 1000. Bertone had its way with another 250 GT. The split nose takes inspiration from racing machines such as the 156 F1 and 330 TRI LM. Giugiaro brought that grille treatment to a road car. The headlights are set at the far edges, and the egg crate grille links to the production vehicles. Its sheet metal juts out to give the Ferrari emblem a place to rest. This element also brings the hood out. Further gains are made in this area through the treatment of the A-pillars, which are pulled further back than what we've seen before. The slightly curved beltline opens the greenhouse up and counters the low cabin. The Rivolta IR300 represented a massive shift for ISO, which had previously made its money on minicars and motorcycles. The front end comes forward to a point. This change in servicing breaks up the wide grille, which would otherwise dominate this area of the car. Creased bodywork above the lamps brings this motion around the fenders. The line disappears as it meets a side vent, but re-emerges at the bottom and continues until it reaches the taillight. This is a novel way to allow the character line to hover above both wheel wells. About 800 examples were produced through 1970. Chevrolet commissioned Bertone to create a variant of the Corvair, partially in an effort to increase its appeal in European markets. Giugiaro also took this chance to correct some of the car's handling shortcomings. GM VP of Design Bill Mitchell sent a chassis to Bertone, which finished the car in a mere 2 months. The Corvair Testudo bears little resemblance to Chevy's Virgin Compact. To balance the car out, Giugiaro shortened the wheelbase by 14 inches, lowered the center of gravity, and lightened the front tub to give more grip to the rear end. Its proportions defy its powertrain layout. The long hood suggests an FR configuration. Those unaware of the Testudo's origins would be surprised to find nothing but a spare tire up there. Many functions are integrated into the impact guard. In addition to serving as the bumper and grille, it also houses the turn indicators and reflectors. The headlights sink into the body and are covered with a mesh material. Whether they're up or down, they'll always be flush with the hood. The upper character line marks off the hood and gives the sheet metal some much needed definition. It travels up the body side and transitions into the B-pillar, trailing a set of intakes in the process. Speaking of which, the pillar treatment is quite unusual. The supports and the wraparound screen are pushed far back. The A-pillars are located where we might expect to see the B-pillars in most other cars. A wraparound bar is the only piece of painted bodywork that ventures beyond the lower box. A plexiglass dome takes the place of a conventional roof. Testudo, the Latin term for turtle, is a reference to the car's roof. The dome and handlebar pillar played into Giugiaro's goal of blending the plan and side views together. The front bumper transitions into the main character line as it passes the wheel. It goes over the rear well and marks off the back guard. The main lighting elements are centralized here, much like the front bumper. Above this sits a gold turtle. The color is purely coincidental, I hope. Interior ergonomics are affected by the dramatic proportions. Access is granted by a massive front-hinged canopy door. Occupants climb inside and slink into low bucket seats. The steering wheel is squared off at the top and bottom to increase its usability in this confined space. And all of the instrumentation is located on an L-shaped panel flanking the driver. It doesn't seem like anyone would be able to drive the Testudo for more than, say, 15 minutes before wearing themselves out. Nuccio Bertone thought otherwise. He drove the car from Italy to the Geneva Motor Show, where it garnered critical praise. After the event, Giorgetto drove it back to Bertone's headquarters. The Alfa Romeo Giulia Sprint GT built upon the ideas introduced with the 2000 Sprint. Its full-width grille houses headlights that spill over the lower grille. This visually narrows the car and gives it a playful character. The fenders are pulled slightly past the rest of the front end, which isolates that area of the car even more. Above this sits a hood gap. Alfa Romeo originally intended for this to be a functional air vent, but later decided against it due to cost. The step remained for style. The hood edge becomes the main character line, creating a defined highlight. A pair of Bertone-designed ISUZUs were present at the 1963 Turin Motor Show. The muscular A3L features a split front end, contrasting rockers, a stainless steel B-pillar band, and a large side intake behind the front wheel. A few years later, the production model went on sale as the GRIFO GL. ISO kept to the prototype's design quite well. The show car featured grille detailing that went up to the hood and inside of the vent. A more subtle bulge replaced this. The side intake shrunk and broke away from the rocker, and the removal of the pillar band integrates that element with the rest of the roof. ISO's stand also featured the A3C. The C in its title stood for Corsa and hinted at the car's competitive aspirations. Giotto Bizzarrini, one of the most distinguished automotive engineers of the day, was the main driving force behind the car. Tensions with ISO resulted in the two parties splitting apart in 1965 after 22 cars were built. Bizzarrini held the GRIFO trademark and exchanged it for the production rights to the car. This model was known as the Bizzarrini 5300 GT. It sports a split grille, much like its former stablemate. Below this sits an unusual bumper. It only shields the front end and provides no protection to the sides. The heavily raked windshield is accented by pulled A-pillars. Chrome-lined fender vents curve onto the hood a bit. The shoulder line dips down before rising up to meet the cabin, which stretches back at a shallow angle. A comeback sets off a lightly decorated rear end. 5300 production ended in 1968 after 115 examples had been built. Bertone began working with Japanese automakers in the early 1960s. Giugiaro noted that they weren't the first to do so. Giovanni Michelotti designed the Prince Skyline. Nissan tasked Pininfarina with styling the Bluebird 410, and Vignale had done a few projects for Daihatsu. Toyo Kogyo, now Mazda, recognized the growing importance of design and wanted to collaborate with a coach builder as well. It sought the advice of Hideyuki Miyakawa, a Japanese journalist who lived in Italy, for recommendations. Miyakawa originally traveled there, partly on bike, for the 1960 Olympics in Rome, and stayed after falling in love with the local. He spoke and wrote fluent Italian, and had spent the past few years familiarizing himself with the country's car industry. He pointed Mazda to Bertone. The two parties signed a contract in April 1962. At the 1963 Tokyo Motor Show in October, Mazda unveiled the LUCE 1000 show car. Giugiaro spent his young career thus far designing sports cars and touring coupes. Before this, he had yet to work on a sedan. This project kicked off a decades-long relationship between him, Miyakawa, and the Japanese car industry. The Innocenti 186 GT was the result of a partnership between that automaker and Ferrari. Just a pair of prototypes were produced before the project was shut down. Alfa Romeo also tapped Giugiaro to style a successor to the Giulia Sprint Speciale. While it resembles a few of the other cars that he designed for the brand, this proposal does feature some notable developments. A full-length crease creates a strong light line across the body. Stainless steel rockers tie in with the roof panel. A wraparound pillar interrupts the ladder and marks off the large, curved rear screen. In several ways, its design calls back to the Corvair Testudo. Although the automaker decided against building the car, he would apply a few of its principles to future projects. In Paris, Alfa Romeo unveiled the Canguro concept. The TZ-based prototype featured several innovations. The windshield was glued to the frame, creating a strong, seamless bond with the body. A series of rounded fender vents were placed just ahead of it. Versions of this showed up on other cars, and not just Alfas either. The quadrifolio on the pillar doubled as an air vent. Instead of using a character line, it relies on a sweeping side blade to twist light and shadow. The Canguro went on to become one of Giugiaro's most influential works. Near the end of 1964, Automobile Quarterly commissioned Bertone to redesign the recently released Ford Mustang. The car made its debut at the New York International Auto Show the following year. I made an entire video detailing the design and legacy of this car. If you'd like to learn more about it, then click the card in the upper right hand corner of your screen. The front end of the Fiat 850 Spider resembles that of the Testudo, with flush headlights, a thin bumper guard, and shoulder line treatment. Fiat officially presented the car on March 7, 1965, the same day that Giorgetto's son Fabrizio was born. Italian tuning house ABARTH created a performance-focused, fixed-head version of the 850 Spider. Two examples were shown at the 1965 Turned Motor Show. Both cars disappeared, but Guy Moerenhout, founder of the ABARTH Works Museum in Belgium, had a replica made. Bertone continued developing sedan proposals for Mazda and presented the LUCE 1500. It was envisioned as a front-wheel drive, rotary-powered saloon, but Japanese nostalgic car notes that it was not a running prototype. The car's front end resembles his early Alfa Romeos, though here, the headlights are set behind covers. A unique emblem sits in the grille. It shows the old Mazda stylized M instead of a rotary. Another is placed on the C-pillar. Giugiaro believed that it wasn't a wholly successful effort, singling out the proportions and tall cabin specifically. In the span of a few years, Giorgetto Giugiaro had proven himself as one of the most skilled designers working in the industry. Bertone developed nearly 30 projects during his time at the helm. He also had personal ties with the company. In 1963, Giorgetto married Maria Teresa, a drafter whom he met while he was at Fiat. Nuccia was the best man at the wedding. Still, the 27-year-old began considering a change of scenery. An article in Car Styling states that Ford offered him a job. He turned the position down because it required him to move to Germany. Meanwhile, ISUZU consulted with Miyakawa on which Italian coach builder it should partner with. The car's styling piece notes that Bertone and Pininfarina already had established ties with other Japanese automakers. Ghia, an esteemed design house that lacked such a connection, appeared to be the obvious choice for them. This union got off to a rocky start, as Ghia's initial creations weren't up to ISUZU's expectations. Giacomo Gaspardo, the firm's general manager, believed that bringing a new design chief on could help salvage their partnership. He and Miyakawa convinced Giugiaro to make the jump from Bertone. Gaspardo named him the manager of Ghia's styling and design department. This title came with an increase in both pay and creative freedom, and with the impending arrival of Marcello Gandini, now was as good a time as any to move on. Giorgetto joined Ghia in December 1965. His first task was to touch up the Ghia 450 SS, a design that Sergio Sartorelli had already developed. The 117 Coupe prototype, which debuted at the 1966 Geneva Motor Show, was the first car to be shaped at his new role at Ghia. The production model stayed faithful to the concept. Its oversized quad headlamps call back to the Giulia Sprint GT. Its hood is completely smooth, doing without the detailing that some of his prior cars had. Bright work is used to call attention to the 117's most distinguishing design element. The front pillar stretches all the way back to the rear in one continuous motion. This expands the greenhouse and creates a large, triangular opening for rear passengers. It goes on to meet the curving beltline, which pivots down the rear deck. In early March 1967, the Fiat DINO 2000 Coupe appeared. It bore a striking resemblance to the ISUZU. Not surprising, considering that Giugiaro was involved with that project while he was still at Bertone. The first prototype was completed in November 1964, but he left before he could see it through to completion. Marcello Gandini brought it the rest of the way there. Both cars feature quad headlamps, expansive glazed sections, and similar fastback profiles. The Fiat side glass forms a pillar kink, while the ISUZU lacks one altogether. The 117 is also 9 inches shorter. Ghia and Giugiaro had a showing to remember in turn. The Fiat 850 Vanessa was designed to appeal to women. It featured integrated child seats, swiveling front seats, and auxiliary gullwing doors. De Tomaso, meanwhile, unveiled the Mangusta. This was the second road car that the fledgling automaker produced. After building 58 Vallelungas, the company wanted to up the ante. The Mangusta was more powerful, more luxurious, and more stylish than its predecessor. Supposedly, the name stemmed from a deal gone wrong with Carroll Shelby. The two parties collaborated on the P70, a machine that was intended to compete in the 1965 Can-Am season. The project went south. To get back at him, Alejandro named his next car the Mangusta. It's the Italian word for mongoose, and was chosen because those animals are proficient cobra slayers. The snakes in this scenario were Shelby's king cobras. The Mangusta commits to the wedge motif. A sharp edge created by the grille hood transition drives this effect from the front. Pop-up headlights could have been used on such a low car, but it instead makes use of quad lamps. Normally, the Mangusta would not have been eligible for sale in the US, as it did not meet height requirements. De Tomaso applied for and was granted a waiver, which allowed them to off-road in that market. When that ran out, the company installed retractable single bulb units. The character line initiates some aggressive body roll. Pulled wheel wells and tapering louvers draw attention to the back half of the car. A strip of bodywork bisects the glass, creating an extraordinary rear signature. The panels are hinged on the spine, lifting up to reveal the Ford 302 V8 and a small luggage compartment. Air intakes just below the windows form small buttresses. While other cars in Giugiaro's portfolio have more historical significance, few of them can compare to the Mangusta in terms of style. It's certainly the most attractive car to wear a De Tomaso badge. 401 examples were produced between 1967 and 1971. The company also built a one-off convertible. The PAMPERO concept was tame in comparison. Its name came from a South American polar wind. Styling was more angular than the Mangusta. There were no curves to speak of past the windshield. Its split grille and fender vents echoed the ISO GRIFO. Giugiaro tucked the fuel filler cap and boot handle inside of these panels, clearing the body side up. De Tomaso decided against building it. leaving the Mangusta as the brand's sole offering. Last, but certainly not least, was the Maserati Ghibli. The name, also borrowed from a type of wind, referenced a Libyan desert gust. Its hood just barely clears the front wheel. This seemed to be a point of emphasis for the company, which went with an engine with dry sump lubrication. It allowed him to lower the hood a touch. Its wide grille tapers up near the sides, and holds a set of auxiliary lights at its far edges. Sleek, retractable headlights sit above these. Air intakes don't come out, but dig into the hood. The central bolt stands out without having to do a whole lot. While the Mangusta's windshield is completely flat, the Ghibli screen has some curve to it. Its hood visually extends at the car's midsection. The character line is positioned at the car's longest point, starting at the nose, straightening up after the front wheel, and continuing straight back to the rear. It makes an already long car appear even longer. Past the flat side windows sits an angular C-pillar. Doors on either side grant access to the Ghibli's 2 fuel tanks. Detailing coming off the roof frames the rear window and defines the deck. Giugiaro hadn't missed a beat in the move to Ghia. Changes in ownership gave him some cause for concern though. After owner Luigi Segre died in 1963, the company fell into the hands of Ramfis Trujillo, the son of the former dictator of the Dominican Republic. Alejandro de Tomaso bought it in 1967. He was already Ghia's president, so this move further solidified his control of the firm. The book Carmen 5, Giorgetto Giugiaro states that he took control, quote, with the declared intention of exercising it alone and in all provinces, styling included. Several employees found him difficult to work with and handed their resignation letters in once the transfer went through. Even Giugiaro, who signed a 3-year contract before coming over, had reached his breaking point. He formed a new company on February 7, 1967, to distance himself from Ghia, ITAL Styling. Aldo Mantovani joined him in the venture. The two met during Giugiaro's stint at Ghia. Mantovani started his career at Fiat in 1944, when he was just 16 years old. He left the company 19 years later to help establish the automotive engineering firm UTIV. ITAL Styling started in a few rooms in Turin, just off the Po River. It offered various styling, engineering, and prototyping services. ISUZU hired the firm to handle the 117's engineering. Alejandro de Tomaso also handed over projects that were in progress when Giugiaro departed. The ISO Rivolta S4, later Fidia, was his third crack at a sedan. Compared to his previous designs at Mazda, it was also the best of the bunch. At the 1967 Turin Motor Show, de Tomaso unveiled the all-electric Rowan. Giugiaro's website states that it was named after and sponsored by the Rowan Controller Company, a firm which had become Ghia's main shareholder. The Oldsmobile Toronado Thor was the designer's attempt to redesign GM's front-wheel drive luxury coupe. Maserati commissioned Ghia to design a replacement for the Sebring. The Simoon featured angular styling that resembled the Thor. It was an admirable effort, though the company went with Vignale's proposal. This became the Indy. And with that, his brief time with Ghia had come to an end. ITAL Styling stuck to familiar, small-scale projects in its first year of existence, partly because it took a cautious approach to business, and partly because its cramped offices couldn't accommodate much more. Full-scale models and prototyping were out of the question at their current location. Still, Giugiaro and Mantovani saw enough in their endeavor to take it to the next level. On February 13, 1968, they started a new company, SIRP, or the Italian Society for the Realization of Prototypes. Several months later, it became known as ITAL Design.